welcome to the podcast. This show is entirely dedicated to the wisdom and the stories of people embracing their true and extraordinary nature, of overcoming, breaking through limits, tapping into universal wisdom, and hopefully inspiring you to do the same. Okay, welcome. Today we have a solo cast. It is just me. And I've decided to do a few solo casts that will probably be sprinkled around in the release dates. And they're based upon common questions that people ask me during sessions. And one of the number one reasons I wanted to create this is as a resource bank, because in a session, usually my sessions are maximum an hour. And as you'll probably see, I'll be able to talk about this one topic for an hour itself. And it's nice to have, an entire episode in your resource bank to be able to refer out to clients when they have questions about the meaning of relationships, because that's what this one's all about. Soulful relationships. What are relationships supposed to be like on planet Earth? And I will be speaking to it based upon the insights I've gathered over my career as an Akashic record reader. Another reason I'm creating this episode is because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening out there that also would like to know this information. If it's one of the most common questions I get during sessions, it's probably something that is plaguing our minds on a regular basis. And what authority do I have to answer that question? Because first of all, we have to realize I am not a relationship expert. Even in my karma, in my reincarnation loop, in my purpose or destiny in this life, it's not to be the master of relationships. And I want to just say that now. So you still have to realize that I'm speaking through my lens and my experience. And you may not resonate with it, but it's still valuable information because I'm not going to speak about it through my subjective experience. I'm going to try to speak about it in the way that I hear spirit guides or the Akashic records relay the information to me. And obviously there's going to be many layers of it. So, you may hear me talk about one subject and feel that that's not aligned, and that's fair. But it might be worth it to listen to the whole podcast because there's different ways that different spirit guides have explained relationships. So there's going to be a few layers, a few things to pull back and reveal that may and hopefully will be very empowering to you as you listen, to you as you uncover it. But there's also a strong possibility that it could be a little bit frustrating or aggravating to hear. And that's not my intention. It's just that I don't believe on planet Earth there's a very good representation of what relationships were designed to be like. I think we've really got off base with this, and what I share with you today may feel kind of like a pivot or a 180 from the lens that you're currently using. This is meant to be empowering and helpful, but it can be a little confronting at the beginning because you're like, it's not how I thought it was supposed to be. And I'm guilty of that as well. I suppose if you were to say, what's my karma all about? Well, there is a component of my karma in which I came into this lifetime assigning people roles where I feel that everything should look or be a certain way. So I've personally had to confront my ideologies of what relationships look like on a consistent and regular basis. So I suppose I've been there with you eating that karma, eating that realization. So before we go any further, I think it's important, first of all, to just realize or acknowledge why we come to Earth and incarnate anyway in the first place. Because if we don't identify that, it's hard to make a map of how relationships fit in to life on Earth. So, first and foremost, why are we here? Well, in the simplistic terms, we're here to have an experience. We're here to have an experience. There is no real other rule book aside from that. So some of your experiences may be to know intimately entwined, bonded love. Some of your experiences may be to know loss or grief or heartbreak. It's all subjective in that first and foremost point. And we could pretty much stop the podcast here, and that would be an answer in of itself. Very vague, but an answer nonetheless. So to break that down further, Some of the other unique or special components of being on Earth is that we have a physical body in the physical realm, and we're learning how to create outcomes and create results in a physical, tangible way. Actually, to create and build a home out of wood and cement or brick. To actually have a job and manifest the money to earn, to get on an airplane and fly overseas, or to have food in our cupboards. It's to tangibly create in the physical world. And then the other component is that there is a process of creation in the physical world that requires you to live in alignment with your own spirit. So it's to know thyself as an individual and to live in alignment with yourself as an individual, as separate from other people. Because in the spirit realm and in many other worlds and locations, we're actually so much more intertwined. We are so connected at this spiritual, soulful level that we don't have to explain ourselves to other people. They can feel us, literally. And I've had dreams where I've been able to experience that again, that oneness, that closeness. It is probably the best, most euphoric feeling that you can think of, to be that understood and accepted at all times. That's unconditional love. And I think that's our baseline. That's what our soul is at baseline. Unconditionally loved and unconditionally loving. That's the baseline. And I want to circle back to that. But for the moment, when we come to planet Earth, we're pulled away from that. We are separated from that unity. And we are literally learning what it's like to be an individual. But we crave relationships and intimacy and unconditional love and understanding because that is our baseline. That's how we are designed to be in the spirit form. But unfortunately, it's actually not the purpose on planet Earth. It's to know yourself as an individual and unconditionally love yourself without that mirror of acceptance from everyone else. So there almost is a component of planet Earth to be rejected, to feel misunderstood, to feel isolated, and to feel a little bit alone. But we forget about that because we're so obsessed with coming back to that unity because it's our baseline. But it doesn't mean that relationships aren't incredibly important on planet Earth. They are still very important, but the success of the relationship that you are in is dependent upon the relationship you've cultivated with yourself. And I meet so many people, and it makes sense. We already know why it would make sense, but I meet so many people that are searching for something in another person. They think that when their soulmate arrives, that they're finally going to be happy, finally know love, finally live like it is in the fairy tale, and we're all going to live happily ever after. And I challenge you to find an actual human being that you know that has successfully done that. Not someone you see on social media, not someone who wrote a book, not someone who was talked on a podcast, somebody you know. And you will never find them because it doesn't exist. I guarantee it. It's just not the design. But that doesn't mean that there's not people out there with relationship ideologies that you want to create. But for them to have got to that type of relationship, there was probably a lot of initiations on the level where the person had to learn to love themselves first, or they had to shed layers or go through hardship and trials and tribulations to get to that point. It doesn't always mean the trials and tribulations are like fighting against one another. Often it's the exact opposite, where they've just really gone through a lot together. And that has allowed them to shed these layers that kept them separate or kept them living in expectations or pushing each other into certain roles, where usually they're just appreciative to have one another. because maybe that's the kind of trial and tribulation that they've been through. That gratitude has been fortified. It's not to say that perfect and beautiful, well, I don't say perfect, but beautiful relationships don't exist. But I guarantee you it did not happen by someone being like, I will find myself in another person. It's just impossible from the way that Earth is designed. You may learn something about yourself or meet yourself through the mirror of a relationship, but there will have to be these initiations where you will have to learn to love yourself in order to create that bonded relationship the way that you desire. We don't find ourselves in another. It'll just never happen because it's not really the name of the game. I mean, there are certain people who have maybe a slight predisposition to have a karmic journey in which they will intimately bond with another person. But I would say it's on the rare side. And they're always the people that are avoiding relationships, right? They're the people that don't trust, they don't surrender, they don't do these things, because that's how you get that karma as your destiny, is you have to learn to surrender and lean into somebody and trust another person. So the people longing for it are often not the people that end up with that karma. So to circle all the way back around, it's to learn how to create in the physical world. And the way that we create in the physical world is to know ourselves and align with our unique individuated truth. But it's a very difficult and challenging thing to do because our natural state is to be so connected and as one and unified and unconditionally loved and unconditional loving. So we often get very distracted with what the actual intention on planet Earth is. And we're obsessed with relationships, but they are important. We need to know ourselves, honor and respect and love ourselves. And even if you can just think back in your own experience, a time where you went through a certain trip, like initiation, where you met yourself at a deeper level and respected or admired yourself at a deeper level, or at least accepted yourself at a deeper level, you probably would notice that that's when your relationships with other people actually deepened. It was a mirror of when you had that deepening within yourself. So basically, relationships on planet Earth, the way that they're designed to be, is that they are a reflection of the love that you have within, or the understanding or the connection that you have within yourself. And that's just how it works. And I don't feel like I need to explain this, but I'm going to just in case. So for the most part, I think people know that are listening that karma is my thing, and Earth is a karmic school. So not every world, and definitely not the spirit realm, it's not bound by the law of karma, but Earth is bound by the law of karma. And the law of karma says that for every action you take, a consequence in that same intention will be reflected back to you, which basically says that the universe on Earth, or the way that the physical laws work on planet Earth, is that everything is a giant mirror. Everything. And it's basically going to always reflect back to you what's going on inside of you or what you're choosing for yourself, usually at the action level. It's not to say that your thoughts or your manifestations or the quality of your thoughts or these things manifest. They do manifest. But if you, let's say, think one thing, but actively choose another with your body, your actions will speak louder. It's a cliche for a reason. Actions speak louder than words because words are easy. They're fickle. It takes no energy to have a thought or say a word. But it does take an incredible amount of energy to drag your physical body through a choice, through an action. And because you've expended more energy into the action level manifests back more powerfully. The other fallacy about karma that most of us get stuck in is we think that what goes around comes around, that this mirror is going to reflect back to us the good deeds we do for other people. Wrong. This mirror is just between you and you. Karma is not taking into account what you're doing for other people, because what that really says is when we start, let's say, picking up shifts for our coworker, the action that you've said is that person's time is more important than my time right now. And that's actually what gets reflected back to you, is the deficit of time. Do you see how easy it is to mistake that, though? That we think it's like, well, actually, I'm being a good person because I'm being thoughtful and considerate, and people will then be thoughtful and considerate of me. Well, that never happens because that's not how karma works. Karma is about you and you and you and you only. It doesn't mean that you kick other people when they're down because that's not going to get you anywhere. But it means you really only have the ability to control yourself and your choices and your actions. You can't play tit for tat with your coworker and be like, well, I picked up for you, you have to pick up for me. Because they often don't. We have those experiences. We have that data that says, yeah, people usually don't come around. Good deed karma isn't a thing. The good people often get shit on the worst. And it's because we can't play that game. We can't control other people's consciousness. We can't control their actions. So karma knows that. It's a universal law and says, well, we can't foresee how other people will use their free will, but we can foresee how we can use it. And that's how karma operates, that only you're responsible for yourself. So only you can focus on yourself. And then the universe just reflects what you choose for yourself back to you. And relationships are not exempt from that. The relationships we find ourselves in will be a mirror of the way that we love and honor ourselves. And that can sometimes be from this subconscious, unknown level. It can also be from the level of how we allow people to treat us. There's a quote, and I don't even know who it's from, but I think it's fairly popular, but it says like, we only accept the love we think we deserve. And that's true. We only accept the love we think we deserve. And this can be a conscious choice or it can be a subconscious choice. I mean, I think back to like my first ever relationship and it was so brutal. And I was really young at the time, so I wasn't really self-aware. I wasn't thinking about the quality of my self-love or the quality of my actions. But looking back now, it's like, yeah, I was really insecure. And I was participating in a deep amount of self-loathing and self-isolation. And was it a coincidence that my relationship mirrored back to me that form of isolation and that form of self-loathing? No, it's not a coincidence, right? So that's like step one. And the foundation of all relationships on this planet is that it will be a reflection of the love that you give to yourself. And I don't think anyone's thinking this, but just in case it's a thought or a question that pops up in the what if realm, well, you have to authentically work on your self-love or self-respect or, self-acceptance. You can't cheat karma by doing surface level self-love things. Just looking in the mirror and saying, a couple of mantras that don't really resonate with you. It's just all brain, no heart. You're not going to be, it's deeper than that. Karma is aware that you're trying to dupe it. You can't dupe karma by doing surface level band-aid type things to try to evoke this self-love to manifest a better relationship. It has to be authentic and organic self-love. That being said, you don't have to be at this perfect healed level in order to find a good partner. Okay? That's not what that's saying, but just be aware that when we project and say that, our partners are terrible, all relationships, whether romantic or not, are always teaching us something or helping us heal something. So it's not always ideal to completely blame the other person and say, this is all them, this is all them. There is a small sliver of personal accountability that you may have to ask yourself, like, well, what did I do to attract this? Or what could this possibly be teaching me? And sometimes it's not your loop to break. Okay, sometimes there's ancestral patterns, there's old karmic patterns. Like, it's not about blaming yourself, right? Because that's not a form of self-love. It's just about being self-aware. And I just want to also say I'm not victim blaming or victim shaming or whatever for people that have been through really awful scenarios. I think about actual humans I know that have went through the most atrocious relationships where they were victimized. at the physical level. And I think about saying that to them, and I just want to say to those friends, those humans that I know. And in most of those cases, it's old, ancient, like old past life karma that they are undoing. It's not to necessarily assess your current life and be like, I deserve this. That's not how it works. And in another case, it's actually ancestral, where there's like a karmic cycle of violence that has went down from generation to generation. And we know that somebody has to try to break that cycle, or it does keep going on. So it's not to personally pin anything on anyone, but just know that your soul chose to come into this lifetime to work out some things, and completely projecting onto other people and making them always the problem usually isn't going to solve anything. And I'll kind of get into that more, but we'll just let that lie, because that's foundation number 1. Everything's a mirror. Foundation number 2 is that on Earth, we're always trying to grow and evolve, and essentially meet ourselves at our most powerful potential, where we can create the physical life we desire and know ourselves well enough in order to do that with ease, right? Because our creative energy comes from alignment with our true self and our individual self. So we have to know thyself and then align to thyself, and then we can become very powerful manifestors and creators. Authenticity is everything. As we're always trying to grow and meet ourselves at deeper levels, right? Like, of course, we're going to be born not really seeing ourselves very clearly. That's just like, why would you come back if you already mastered the game, right? You're only back because you didn't master it, or you want to get more mastery, deepen your mastery. So you're guaranteed born with some type of, I'm not there yet, for whatever reason. You just wanted to play the game again, but whatever, it doesn't matter. You're not going to start with the answers. What would be the point of your precious life? You're going to start without the answers. You're going to start without seeing yourself clearly. And then you have to go through life and meet yourself at deeper levels in order to live more authentically, live more aligned, to create the physical world and life that you desire. So how do we meet deeper levels of ourselves? There's usually, because humans are creatures of comfort, we usually don't just like willingly evolve. There usually has to be something that we're dissatisfied with or triggers us into change and deepening into who we are. So relationships are a huge way that we facilitate initiations, deepenings, that type of thing. And the 2 most transformational relationships that I witness are often our romantic partners and our parent-child relationship. But let's just save that topic for a different day. So we'll stick with our romantic relationships. So our romantic relationships can be very intense, very painful. We're very bonded, and we do go through a lot of initiations together. So relationships are a way in which we grow. We may start in a place where the relationship doesn't look or feel like how we really want it to, but as we peel away layers and learn more about ourselves, let more of our guard down, build trust, the relationship will essentially often grow and rise to meet that rising healing level within us, if we choose to heal instead of shut down or build bigger walls. Because if we choose to shut down or build bigger walls in a relationship, then that's mirrored back to us as well. It's just always a reflection. And these relationships are they're pre-agreed upon for the most part. We call them soul contracts. So soul contracts are the arrangements that we make with other key players in our life in order to facilitate certain lessons. And most every significant person in your life will be a soul contract, somebody you wrote into your lifetime. I'm not going to get into the fine print of that because there is free will. There's always free will. And sometimes things go according to plan and sometimes they don't. But for the most part, we're pretty good at staying on track with the things we design in the realm of relationships. So when we talk about creating these contracts and agreements with other people in our life, we do this before we incarnate. And I want you to think of it like you're the writer of your own play. When you come to Earth, this is your play. You're the star, you're the director, you're the writer. You're also the person that oversaw the cast and crew members. And once you're here, you just don't remember. That's what you did. So even the most toxic people in your life, you probably wrote them in to play your antagonist. And shockingly enough, sometimes we would even write in someone we love very deeply at soul level to play our antagonist. And just think about it, if you were a movie star, even though you are going to be arch nemesises in the movie, in the play, you still want to work with someone you have good chemistry with. It's going to be a better production. It's going to be more captivating, more memorable. So even sometimes, not always, our villains in our life are actually people that we asked to be there. And when the curtains come up at the end of your life, you guys are going to celebrate and go to the after party together and be like, we did it, you know? So it's not always for us to understand why certain things in a relationship look or feel or are a certain way. We are growing through our relationships. Does that mean you're supposed to stay in the relationship? Obviously not. You would know if there's even the ability to grow within that relationship or if it allows you to grow. But oftentimes, so this is where we get into the good stuff. We've talked about these two foundations. One, everything's a mirror. This is an individual journey. Two, when we come into contact with our relationships, they are to teach us and heal us and grow. So you're probably not making any mistakes, and the answers lie within, right? We can look at our relationships and be like, this person should be more like this. I wish they were more compassionate. I wish they were more open, more trusting, more blah, blah, blah. You name it. Well, the only thing we have the power to do, right? We can't change the other people, is to say, wait, how open am I? Am I trusting? Am I being vulnerable? Am I meeting the needs of that person? And see what kind of mirror game might be going on. And the only thing you can do is take responsibility for yourself and have those conversations or start working on the way that you contribute to the boundaries, etc., and see if the relationship opens as you open or grows as you grow. And oftentimes, if it doesn't, there's this natural separating away from that person. You're growing, you're being more honest, you're communicating, you're becoming more vulnerable, and this person is most likely to rise to meet you. But if they don't, that's when the indication begins to show, like, okay, maybe this person isn't meant for me. I'm becoming a new person and they're still staying the same. And I've tried to bring them on the journey. I'm not just shutting them out. I'm not keeping my growth a secret. I'm not still hiding my vulnerabilities. I've really invited them in by being honest, being open, being authentic. And if they're still not coming with you, then there's this separation that grows, right? Your energy just deselects, and usually it becomes obvious that there's a need to end it. And so this is where we get to the part that hopefully is helpful, or the third foundation of the relationship that helps to illustrate what maybe it's supposed to look like. So the way that relationships on Earth were designed to be, because it is an individual experience, that's how we manifest and succeed on Earth, is to live in alignment with ourself and let our spirit guide us, our truth, our inner truth guide us. We do need space and time to be able to figure out what that inner truth is. It's an individual journey. That's why we feel so separate, awkward, and misunderstood. It's part of the journey. So, what is a relationship supposed to look like by design in its most perfect expression? Well, what it is, knowing what we know now, is that you get to be the fullest, most beautiful, self-expressed version of yourself. You don't have to change a thing about yourself. You don't have to hide a thing about yourself. You don't have to feel like a part of yourself is unworthy. You don't have to carry guilt or shame. You are totally a glowing, radiant being that shines as bright as the sun. And your relationships, your romantic or intimate relationship, is meant to come into your world to witness you, to see you shine. and to love you exactly as you are. It's a witnessing in your light that is taking place. And obviously, you would be doing the same for them. And this is where people get stuck. Because people, when I say the first part of it, you're like, that is what I want. I want to be all of me, no guilt, no shame. I don't want to have to change or edit anything about myself. And I want someone to look at me like I am the center of their universe, that I am the literal sun, and they bask in my warmth. People can accept that with great ease. This is where we get stuck. Guess what? You're also witnessing your partner in their radiant light, in their fullest, most beautifully self-expressed version, without having to put them in a box or expect them to adhere to certain roles that don't really align with them, or to say, I like most of you, but I don't like these things. You should get rid of them. I don't love them. You should feel guilt or shame about those parts of you. You can't have it both ways. They're witnessing you in all of your unique, eclectic, radiant energy, and you're witnessing them in their unique, weird, eclectic, radiant energy. There's no control. There's no judgment. There's no role assignments. There's not meant to be comparisons to say, oh, well, so-and-so's partner does this and you don't. Like, that's not allowing someone to be radiant. So that's the perfect, most best case scenario, right? Is to witness one another. And of course, I'm going to talk about the what ifs, but this, like, I know there's some questions, but we have to finish designing the picture first. So we're here to witness each other in all of our radiance. How do we even get to that point in a relationship? Well, again, you can't control what another human being does with their free will. You can only control yourself. I don't even want to say can you control yourself, but you can only focus on yourself. So the only responsibility that you have to create that outcome is to create that outcome for yourself. To continue to peel away the boxes, the labels, the expectations, the role assignments that you think you have to play in order to be loved. I'm going to say that again because it's a massive thing that is the contingency or is the step that is required in order for you to have that type of relationship. You have to peel away the layers, the boxes, the labels, or the roles you think you have to play in order to be loved. And remember that you are always inherently lovable. You don't have to do anything to earn it. And depending on where you stand or where you are in your life right now, that may be a really big stretch. Your whole life may be made up of expectations and roles and labels that you wear in order to remain lovable. We wear so many. We think we have to cook a healthy meal every day. We think we have to look a certain way. We can't speak our truth. We can't complain. We can't have a bad day. We can't sleep in. We wear a lot of them, okay? So the journey from where we're standing right now to where we need to be may be a few years. It may be a lot of dissecting and pulling things away. We may not be there yet, and that's okay. So to get from point A to point B personally, there could be a lot of change, a lot of expectations, a lot of shifting how your life looks in order to just be your most authentic self without these boxes, labels, actions that we take to feel loved. So change always scares people because we cannot predict the outcome of something we've never done before. Our brain loves to compute and analyze what the outcome is going to be if we choose this, this, and this. Well, if you start choosing to just live authentically and outside of your boxes, labels, roles, and expectations, your brain cannot compute. It does not have enough data. It probably has almost zero data to go off of what's going to happen if you do that. So what it's going to do is it's going to tell you that you're going to die and everything's going to fall apart if you dare do something differently. Because our survival programming as a human is designed to keep our physical body alive. And it has no data to draw from that says that's going to work out for you. So it's going to gaslight you, tell you you're dumb, that you can't do this. But you need to do it anyway. You have to ignore that fear tactic that your survival skills will use to stop you from doing something different because it doesn't know the outcome. And that's just a blanket statement that you could use for everything in your life. But making these changes moves you into alignment and allows you to start taking the steps required to be in that type of relationship. And when we start to make changes, we can rattle the standards of our household, right? What will our children think? What will our partner think? What will our friends think? What will our parents think? When we start to change, sometimes there is like this upheaval that comes with us making different changes, right? We're not going to cook every day anymore, or whatever it is. That's going to be a shared responsibility in the household because you don't love cooking, but yet you've done it every day, 3 meals a day, right? So we're giving people back responsibility. We're making changes. There is always this fear that says, I want this beautiful, aligned relationship with the people in my life. But for me to just do that for myself and expect them to be good with it, that just feels like the pieces don't add up. And I get that. I've learned many times on my spiritual journey that you can't logic the outcomes of the spirit. It just doesn't work. It's not a logical process. It's a spiritual process, okay? So, yeah, change can cause upheaval. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not going to cause like a bit of change or misdirection or like direction changes or conversations where you have to explain what's going on inside of you with the people you love. I'm not going to say it's always going to be like roses and daisies, but the funny thing is, because I've done it, I've watched other people do it, is like it's often pleasantly surprising what the people who do love you will do for you when you start showing up and doing it for yourself. It's the mirror again. Often people rise to meet you. But here's where your responsibility lies to make that happen. The second component is like, again, you have to get yourself in alignment, but don't just do it in silence. Don't just come in and shake everything up without talking about it, without explaining it. That vulnerability, that communicating about your feelings and about your goals and your dreams and your desires is a part of stripping the labels, stripping the actions that you participate in that you think you need to in order to remain loved. We want to be easygoing. We don't want to be difficult. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to talk about our feelings, our thoughts, our dreams, because if we voice these things and risk rejection, how painful would that be? Well, being honest, having those conversations, inviting your partner in to say, this is what I want to try. This is what I want to experience. I want to see if my life could be easier or better or more fulfilling. You know, I always think tomorrow I'm going to feel better, or next year or next year or next year, and next year never comes. I got to take that power back, and I want you to go with me. I want to see if we can create this. And that openness is like such a huge step in the right direction in your relationships. That's what love is. Letting someone witness you in what's real and authentic, even on the bad days, even when it's not sunshine, even when it's kind of a stormy day. Letting somebody witness that and love you anyway. And then oftentimes, we are the change that we wish to see in our world, and other people begin to change with us. You know, and it becomes this like growth that you do as a couple. And I've experienced that in my relationship. I've watched it happen in many other people's relationship, but it's never going to happen. Like, what's the saying? Nothing changes if nothing changes. We're always projecting to tomorrow, next year, when the kids are older, once I'm retired, once this. But once those days come, you've worn the cloak or the roles or the labels or the jobs or the expectations that you felt you had to in order to be loved for so long, that now you have an even bigger journey ahead of you, which is to take off all of this stuff and figure out who you are in the first place. Do it now, because it only gets harder the longer you wait. So that would be like the first step. And some of the like buts and ifs and what if that I often get is that, well, my husband does this, or my partner does that, or they're not like that, or they're lazy, or they're this, or they're that. And there's all this like projection onto all the things that's wrong with the other person, which again, we know we can't control. If I don't cook for my children, then who's going to? If I don't do it, no one will get it done. Okay, you could be right about that, right? Sometimes there's a process where we do grow and our partners don't grow with us. And maybe we need to see that gap in order to know that that relationship's not for us. But usually, sometimes it's on the contrary. Where I see people go wrong is that they don't communicate with their partners about these things. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, where you're just like, why aren't you doing more? And then you almost like just come in ready to attack their character. And of course, it leads to a fight because it's not really about you opening up about your vulnerabilities. Because again, you're projecting onto them instead of taking the accountability for your role in the creation of that situation, right? Your partner might actually be lazy, of course, but you're also enabling them to be lazy when you allow those things to take place. And oftentimes, if the people really do love us, if we could come at it from a different approach, and I mean, it's different for every couple, different for every relationship. But again, the only thing that you can take accountability and responsibility for is yourself. It really hurts my feelings when I feel like you don't care about, the energy that I've spent in a day versus what you've spent in a day. And I wish we could split this even, because I'm really getting tired. And I know that I didn't say anything to you sooner, but it's building this sense of resentment. And resentment is really detrimental, and, it leads to these things and what have you. Like, don't just pour it all at once, let the conversation happen. But the distance and the patterns that you've created in your relationship are because that person took an inch, took a mile, and you let them take it. And maybe they know better, but at the same time, because the way we cast our relationships, almost always I see, nobody's going to give us the healing for free. If we're used to giving, if we're used to being walked on, if that's our karma to be walked on to, a big karmic journey for a lot of people is like keeping external harmony at the expense of internal harmony, where everything looks great on the outside, but someone's screaming on the inside because they ate that garbage while everyone else got, silver platters of food. That's a huge karmic journey. The Libra karmic journey of I've created all this external peace, but my insides are screaming. I'm not happy, but everyone else is happy and taken care of. Well, do you think that anyone, if that's your reason, if that's something you came to karmically heal in your lifetime, do you think for 1 second anyone's going to come into your life and rescue you and say, let me do it all? Let me take responsibility for this. Never. Because that is not healing. That is someone else taking your karma off your back and carrying it for you, which never happens. The only way you're going to get out of those situations of the karmic stories you've created by the choices you've taken is you need to take a new choice and usually face the discomfort of maybe for once letting other people carry their discomfort, the consequences of their actions, the imbalance, and you get to feel good for once because it's not yours to carry. So yeah, there's going to be a moment in your story where you have to change that navigation, that choice with your karmic energy, your karmic consequences. And it's going to be scary. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're going to die and you can't do this and everything's going to fall apart because your brain doesn't have data that says this is going to work out if I do this, because you've literally never done it in recent history. So you have to take accountability for what you're allowing in your life, because usually that's the exact thing that you came to work out karmically with your relationships with other people. It's like you got to lean into the storm. And that reminds me of the teaching of the buffalo. So one of the spiritual teachings of the buffalo is, as far as we know as human society, the buffalo is the only animal that when they know a storm is coming, they run into it. Most other animals run away from the storm, they take shelter, they avoid those things, while the buffalo runs straight to it and says, it's coming no matter what. We're going to have to deal with it. We might as well face it head on, because we're going to move through it faster than if we keep running away, right? If you run away from a storm or you hide from a storm, the storm could go on for days. If you run into it and then get to the other side, it's sturdy, it's painful. You're going into it right head on, but you move through it so much faster. And that's just a general rule of thumb for like everything in this lifetime. You run away from it, you just prolong the outcome, because no matter how you spin it, it doesn't matter what you believe or what you don't believe. We are having an earthly human experience, and we're souls, we're spirits. So when we come here, the lifetime is comparatively short. These are not long lifetimes compared to time in general. So we've got a lot of growth to do, a lot of healing to do, but not a lot of time. So the more you run, the more difficult or uncomfortable your life becomes, until you finally say you've had enough and you finally face your storm, right? You probably have examples, maybe not relationship examples, but examples where you have run from a confrontation for a long time. And when it finally caught up to you, it destroyed you, or it was eviscerating. Like someone literally may have had to die for you to confront the meaning of your own life. You know, you may have had to lose something that mattered to you in order to be able to appreciate it, right? Earth is weird like that. We make meaning of things by learning the opposite, right? We don't know what it means to be cold if we've never been hot. If we were always just cold, that would be normal. We don't know what tall people are if we don't have the comparison of short people. If everyone was tall, that would just be the height of people. We need the discrepancies to be able to define the other. It's a weird time. It's a weird place. And it's not the norm everywhere. This is what you signed up for whatever reason. So, you can pretend or avoid or deny that this is your journey, but in some sense of the term, it is your journey. Maybe not in relationships, but somewhere it's your journey in some realm of life. So taking responsibility for what you've allowed and taking responsibility to no longer allow that, but not from a place of blaming the other person. That's usually never conducive. I mean, flip the roles. Imagine your partner coming to you and saying that they're unhappy because you're not like this, this, and this. Like, it's just going to shut you down. I'm not saying that your partner deserves to be babied or the people in your life deserve to be babied. I'm not saying that, but you need to come at it from that stance of like, all right, what could this be teaching me? How did I co-create this situation with the other person? Why would I have signed up to live my life with this person? Why did I contract them in? I mean, zoom out, see it from a bird's eye view, and try to approach everything from that lens and that perspective. We're running out of time. I knew this was going to be a long one, but some other things people ask is like, what about my kids? What about the people that depend on me to cook supper every day? I have to do this and I have to do that for them, to the point where I can't just be my unbridled, unlabeled self. I'm a mom or I'm a parent, or they have a really tight schedule. Like, how could we possibly focus on ourselves? Okay, that's valid. I do recognize the busyness and the pressure and the expectation of being parents in this lifetime. But here's what the answer always is. every single time. First of all, having children was meant to be done in a community style fashion where we had children with our friends and we worked as a community, and it was meant to be this fun, beautiful thing. And it was also meant to be that the young people had the children because their bodies were strong, but the elders, the older people, were meant to be around to guide and coach and just teach the children because their minds were strong. And that generational type raising of children, that community style raising of children, was to take the pressure off of this type of heavily weighed down calendars and expectations that we have with our children. So step number one is it possible for you to do something in a community style setting? Can you set up a carpool when you're taking your kids to sports? Can you have 1 week on, 1 week off with your partner, where there is 1 week where your partner does a lot of the shuffling and vice versa? How can you make your food prep better? Like, can you order HelloFresh? Can you meal prep on Sundays as a family? So it's this fun, this tradition that you guys do. There has to be a way to get some stuff off of your plate, and you just have to think creatively. And I mean, I am not a parent, so I would never give this advice, but I feel like I can see this nudge saying like, yeah, like your kids maybe need to be in sports, but is it still a bit excessive? Like, are you in just choosing to say you need to do these things when you don't really? Maybe your children aren't even interested in it. It's just the social norm that seeks to disempower you. Because honestly, everything that is a societal norm, I guarantee you, is something set to disempower you. There's a lot of people out there that sit at the top and rule this society, and they can only rule if you carry the bottom, right? Capitalism, we know it's based on the pyramid scheme. It's like the people at the bottom keep the people at the top up. Like, you have to ask yourself, though, what you really want, right? Because if you're fairly content with the way that your life is going, then don't take any of this advice. If you are happy and loved and healthy and rested and nourished, then you can just throw this whole podcast in the garbage. It doesn't matter. This is for the people that are saying, I want more. Well, you have to do more. And the more beautiful the thing, the more elite and exceptional and radiant the thing that you want is, the more you have to deviate from your expectations, your roles and your labels. And that's just how it works, right? You can go to the beach in Miami. I don't know why I was using Miami, but you can go to the beach in Miami, which I think is like right in the center of the city. It takes 5 minutes to get there. And it is beautiful, but like you're sitting there with all the other people. Not really this like sacred, awesome thing. But if you want to go to that like private viewpoint where it's just you and your family and there's not the distraction and the noise and the comparison, well, you have to hike the peak. And at the time, you might be like, this hike sucks. It's hard. No one else is doing it. I don't have any like script for this. What am I doing? But when you get there, it's just you. Nobody else took the chance or the time to create something so exceptional and beautiful and radiant. So if you want those things, you have to go on the trek. And I mean, some people are good with what they have, and that is just divine. Because believe it or not, even if you do just accept what you have, you're still going to learn the lessons. You just might not get to the peak, like get to that radiant peak where it's just you and your family, but you'll still get your lessons. It's for the people that want that radiant, beautiful thing. It's like, you just have to like take the path less traveled. Like, I think there's like the poem. It's like, take the path less traveled. I took the path less traveled, and that's made all the difference. And at the time when we take the path less traveled, it is uncomfortable, but it's usually shorter than the other journey and heavily more rewarding. So it's up to you. You don't have to do this. I'm just saying, people ask a lot of questions, and this is the answer we get. And the other part about children that I hear is that every time the answer is like, well, you're so concerned about showing your children and wanting to give your children the world so they don't have to deal with the pains or the struggles that you had to deal with. But the best way to teach our children is to lead by example, to show them that no, your parents aren't going to sacrifice everything to be a parent. No, I have a career that I'm mean something about. I have love that is nourishing and fulfilling and balanced. I have a voice. I have dreams. I have these things. And that's what inspires children. And I mean, even if you think about it with your own parents, like, who taught you that maybe what you really wanted in life wasn't really possible? Was it your parents? Or vice versa, who taught you in life that what you wanted was possible? Was it an adult role model? What we say to our children does not mean as much as what we actually show them through our actions. Actions speak louder. So be the change that you wish to see in your world. And that's usually the thing that children remember and actually, integrate, is what I'm told. That's what I'm told every single time that someone asks that question. The other questions I often get asked are about different soulmates. I had this really weird connection with a coworker. I had this really weird connection with this stranger on the street. Well, yeah, we have more than one soulmate and they're pocketed in the weirdest places. So it's not shocking. It doesn't mean that you have to blow up your life to be with that person. This lifetime is short, remember, and your soulmates are never lost. Your stories are never lost. Your past is never lost and your future is never lost. Your soulmates are never lost. We do not possess, we do not own another person. We witness other people in their beauty and in their light. So to think that there's just this one person and you're making the wrong decision by being with this other person, it really depends. Because if you leave your current relationship and go to a different relationship, if you haven't done any of that inner work, the same problems that you've found in relationship number one are going to be recreated in relationship number two. So let's say you don't know how to communicate what your needs are. And that's created this stale relationship with the partner you have now. Well, if you think that in partner number two, who looks shiny and new, you feel like you remember them, you laugh, you have a lot in common. If you think that if you left partner number one and went to partner number two, that you wouldn't eventually be faced with the need to communicate your needs, that's not going to happen. You're eventually going to come to the point in that relationship where you still have to face that challenge of communicating your needs. So it's not always about which person is the right person. It's about, am I actually tackling the issues at hand here? Because everything's a mirror. So it's like if you leave bathroom A and that mirror because you don't like what you're getting and you just go to bathroom B and you're like, this mirror will work better, it's not going to. You have to get a comb and brush your hair, or you have to change your outfit. And at that point, the mirror's reflection can change, right? It's this personal inside job. But I'm also not preaching that you stay in toxic relationships. Like, I really hope that people listening know the difference between the type of person that would ever want to witness you in all of your beauty and radiance and the type of person who wants to consume and belittle and control and own your radiance. That's bad. Witnessing without attachments, without strings, without control, and trying to consume, very different stories. Consumption of your light and radiance, not appropriate ever. Okay. Question number 3, or I don't even know if that's 3, but the other thing people ask me about sometimes is twin flames. And I really steer away from this topic because I know it means a lot to people. And I don't want to sit here and crush your dreams, but I really hope that throughout this podcast, you would know that that is not a real thing. And I will tell you some of the information I've had from the spirit guides that may be comforting to you if you are someone who really loves the idea of twin flames. So I don't actually know anything really about twin flames. So I'm going to tell you what I think it is or what I've been told it is. And that's the definition I'm working with. If you have an alternate definition of what twin flames is, well, I can't speak to that because I don't know it. The definition of twin flames I know about and I'm going to speak to is that Creator created you as one soul and he broke you in half and he sent you down to planet Earth for whatever reason, and you're separate and you're searching for each other, and you'll never become whole or fulfilled or complete until you find your other half. I just don't even know what to say about that, because that's just like not at all why you would come here. That's not a part of Earth, and it also doesn't allow us to live under the law of karma. It breaks the law of karma. It breaks the law of manifestation. It just violates all these universal laws that govern this world. So, have I seen people split up into different incarnations? Yeah. But it's not about romance, I'll tell you that. These people have like multiple incarnations happening at once over different timelines or realities on Earth. And it's just a way to like learn faster. So I literally know this woman, and she's incarnated here as one of my friends, a spiritual friend. She's also, I've seen it with my own two eyes in the spiritual world, I guess, where she's incarnated and she works for the government somewhere. And like, I don't know if it's exactly this reality, but like a parallel reality. So people can fractal out. They will like almost like mirror themselves out so they can have many different incarnations all at once, so they can just like learn everything and get out of here. Time isn't really real. So all of your incarnations are happening at once anyway. I have seen people that have one lifetime in a different planet, different world, and one lifetime here. Like, with all those different ideologies of how we separate ourselves out, it's hard for me to believe that there would be like this loving path. It just, because as far as I know as well, it's like a vacuum. Only one of you can exist in the certain timeline that you're in. And if you accidentally flip into another timeline, it's like the other one gets like sucked into this timeline. Only one of you can exist anywhere. It just doesn't make any sense. There are some people, like I said, that have karma of learning how to deeply unify with another soul. And these people have often spent many, many lifetimes in isolation and abandon. But again, it's not going to happen until they allow those walls to come down. Like, there's no such thing as a savior because of the law of karma. You're responsible for yourself and yourself only. But here's what they have said that's like so close to the definition of twin flames that I think maybe it was really the original definition, where there are certain souls that were created at the same time. And because of that timeline where they were created at the same time, their vibration, their frequency, the way they connect to one another, they're just like two peas in a pod, and you feel like you are home. But the way they described it to me is that they were like, I want you to think about it as like a symphony. Okay. And symphonies can be this beautiful, ethereal, otherworldly like experience, because when the energies come together of the flute and the cello and whoever else is in the symphony, it's like they're played together in such perfect unison that it starts to feel like you don't hear the flute, you don't hear the cello, you hear the music that is made. You can't hear the individual components, you hear the song that's made. And it feels like this one unison thing. But at the end of the day, it's still a cello and a flute. But they resonate so well together. They intermesh so well together that it almost like becomes this one thing. And that's a real thing. There are people, it might not just be one person, there are souls that are going to make you feel that way. Albeit, I think, rare to find them, they do exist. And I do feel that there's often sometimes this one or two souls that just like resonate with you at that level. And that's a beautiful thing. And maybe you're meant to be with that person in this lifetime because you need to learn love and harmony and all these things. But most of the time, that's not what we're here to learn, because we start to sacrifice our individuality, which is what we came here to learn on planet Earth. We've sacrificed our individuality to feel that ecstasy, right? And the ecstasy is the norm. That's what we feel outside of the incarnation all the time. It's not why we came and incarnated. Earth is known as one of the most difficult places to incarnate because it is so separate and difficult to live in. I don't believe that you only have one true soulmate. I don't believe you can mess up your path. I don't believe anything of that nature. And honestly, I feel like the twin flame thing is very dramatic. Like, theater dramatic, where to say like that causes a lot of devastation, that causes a lot of limiting beliefs and fear. And I'm of the standpoint that if anything makes you feel fear, or like you could mess something up, or that there's something wrong with you, that's disempowering. That feels heavy. That feels like you should get into a box in order to be loved. And then if you don't pay close enough attention and you don't edit or change or be patient and wait, that you can't have the things that you want, that you desire, that there's some other external thing that's going to bring you what you want. That to me is the exact opposite of love, of empowerment. And every time my soul tries to sit in that energy, it just feels like it shuts down. You're everything right now. You're worthy of everything right now. You're worthy of love. You're worthy of being witnessed. You're worthy of freedom, expansion. You're worthy of all of those things. The only thing stopping you from having it is the discomfort of taking responsibility to create it. And I do believe, unfortunately, that is just the process of being human. And I'm not saying it's the process of what our soul is doing all the time. I'm not saying it's the process in other worlds or realms, but it is unfortunately the process of planet Earth because of the way we are governed under universal law, and we cannot seem to bend or break or hide it. And even if you, like, let's say, are into astrology, it's like, even the astrology, the planets, all the energies that govern our world do say the exact same thing. I mean, we think about Saturn, and he says it's karma, action and consequence. Take responsibility for your life. We think about the sun, the radiant sun in the center of our universe, and he says, know thyself and love thyself. Who else do we have? Let's pick a feminine planet. We even say Venus, and Venus is all about being vulnerable. She's always walking around nude in the Garden of Eden, indulging in grapes and sensuality. Well, that's a pretty vulnerable thing to do, right? Like, how many of us feel comfortable walking around nude and just like indulging with grapes and wine? Or the moon, right? The moon is a feminine planet and also invites us into our wildness, to howl at the moon, to take our clothes off and bathe under the moon, under the rivers, and howl and be these wild women, right? Like, I mean, all of it is either choosing to be vulnerable or choosing to take responsibility for your life. There are components of surrender, but the surrender often happens after the initial action has been taken. And we even want to look at the process of creating a child, right? That's often the process in which we create anything, including loving relationships, where we have to take the action, plant the seed, if you will, take the action that we need to create the thing. And then we have to surrender it to the divine and let the process of gestation and, creation happen. And then we have to take the action of giving birth to it and showing up for that thing, and then continuing to surrender and nourish and nurture it. Like, there's this action surrender process. Action, surrender. And the surrender process is a lot longer than the action process, okay? Which can be where we all fall off track. We're expecting outcomes tomorrow. But there has to be that surrendering and allowing things to take place. But that's how we create everything on this planet. The blueprint is in how we create the most physical, difficult thing to create, which is literal other life.